So you're just going to barge past it? What about this side? Keep going straight. How tight is the bloody...
The droughts came over the whole land until the 9th hour. The veil of the temple was torn right down the middle, and when Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, he said,
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
With these words, he breathed his last.
It's a bit different from Greg James, isn't it? They're broadcasting a mass on the radio. Ominous.
It always seemed a bit odd to me, using the radio as a medium for mass. For one, I'm almost certain it's impossible to receive the Eucharist over the airwaves, and naturally, there are a lot of pauses for reflection, which mean long silences, the very opposite of the radio's forte. My nan's old bungalow is also a great place for reflection. Being secluded in the Irish countryside, it's the perfect getaway, so I wanted to take one last trip, ahead of it being sold, to reflect on how much this place meant to me growing up, especially as it's always felt like the most tangible connection I have to my roots and to Patty.
Good morning, how are you? Welcome to Longford.
My grandma was born here in 1942, before leaving for greener pastures in the early 60s. For the sake of historical accuracy, she was actually born in this house, which I'm led to believe, at the time, wasn't as open plan. Being the intrepid explorers my ancestors were, when they left this dwelling, they took the adventurous plunge and moved from here, all the way, to there. If that distance is hard to gauge from that angle, here's how long it takes if you were to reverse between the two in a 2013 Seat Leon. Personally, I think you could probably shave a few seconds off by driving forwards. My great-grandparents both lived here until their deaths, and in doing so, made it clear who their favourite child was by leaving the entirety of the bungalow to my grandma, despite being one of 9. She continued to come here over the course of her life, and, on a regular basis, her and my granddad would take my sister, 2 cousins and I along too. I can safely speak for all of us when I say we have near endless happy memories of spending our summer holidays here, and it's that I'm finding hard. That being disconnecting the bricks and mortar from those memories themselves. It's almost as if through parting with the house, I'm letting those memories go too. I suppose the house was merely the backdrop for those good times, a facilitator, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that poetic. But still, it's hard to let go of. I guess it's better to let someone else try and make their own memories there, rather than hold on to something that's a sea away and thus hard to look after. We'd only be dragging the family name through the mud if we let another house fall into disrepair on the same lane. But to entertain that poetic notion for a moment, I guess the bungalow feels like the only physical embodiment that's left of my grandma. It's as if she's a part of its stone, and in ways she sort of is. The imprint of her child-sized hand still scars the concrete in the bedroom, cheekily created when the house was originally being constructed. We associate a lot of meaning to places, and from running this all over, I realised I was quick to forget that I'm quite literally a living embodiment of her. She's much more a part of my genetic foundations than those of the house. The bricks and mortar we share is blood and DNA, something which Ancestry.com confirmed 80% of mine is probably hers. It also fact-checked my earlier joke about my ancestors not being very ambitious travellers by informing me that we have in fact lived in the same small radius for at least 1,000 years. After all, it was only from my grandma initially leaving that house in the first instance that allowed her to create a better life for herself, and by extension, me. In doing that, she was able to hold on to the house when it was passed down to her, and as a consequence, made it so I was able to visit often and make those memories there. Something which I'll be eternally grateful for. So perhaps it's only fair for someone else to have the chance to make their own, even if that simply turns out to be just being chuffed that they've mastered navigating the car through the tricky, narrow entryway. Backwards and all.